The second season of The Walking Dead was once considered to be one of the weaker seasons by many fans. That is until the later seasons of the show aired. With the benefit of hindsight, it is now appreciated by the community as being one of the best seasons of the entire series. As for me personally, I first started watching the show when a marathon aired about a week before the Season 2 premiere on AMC. I was instantly hooked, and I eagerly anticipated the release of the show's second season. From then on, Season 2 became my favorite due to its quality dialogue, the intense conflict between Shane and Rick, and the profound moral challenges it presented to the audience. Now for today's video, I want to cover one of the most iconic moral challenges presented in this very season, being Dale's desperate plea to save Randall's life. This entire ethical problem was several episodes in the making, but it found its climax in episode 11, where Dale poured his heart into the defense of Randall's life. Dale Horvath is often viewed to be the wise man and/or moral heart of seasons 1 and 2. But was he right in this particular instance? I personally believe that the show's writers wanted us to side with him, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they, and by extension Dale, was right. With that being said, I want to spend some time analyzing Dale's argument before I give you my take on whether or not he was right or wrong. But before we can start, allow me to briefly ask you for your support. Please consider becoming a channel member, that way I can afford to make more of these videos, all for your entertainment. It's pretty affordable, about the price of a stick of gum in the United States. Anyways, with that shameless plug out of the way, let's begin. Dale's argument can be reduced to a singular premise, being that the termination of Randall would cause the Atlanta group to lose their humanity, thus changing them all for the worse.
Oh, the world we know is gone. But keeping our humanity? That's a choice. One of him.
There's 30 of them.
Killing him doesn't change that.
Nope.
But it changes us.
They try to kill us.
But don't you see, if we do this, the people that we were, the world that we knew is dead.
He supports this core premise by arguing that the execution of Randall is unnecessary, hence arguing that his death would not improve the safety of the farm.
But there's a dozen of us. One of him.
There's 30 of them.
Killing him doesn't change that.
Nope.
We kill someone because we can't decide what else to do with them. You saved him. And now look at us.
He also argues that killing Randall for a crime he has yet to commit is unethical, while also pointing out the flaw with the concept of guilt by association.
And what would that be? We can't call witnesses, go before a judge.
What, so he's automatically guilty by association and sentenced to death? He's just...
So the answer is to kill him to prevent a crime that he may never even attempt?
Dale also makes a separate claim that Randall could be an asset to the group.
Well, he could be an asset. Give him a chance to prove himself.
Put him to work?
We're not letting him walk around.
While also claiming that Randall is just a kid or a young man.
He's just a kid.
The guy himself?
You know killing the boy had to be his idea.
Circles again.
This is a young man's life. And it is worth more than a 5-minute conversation.
Dale was absolutely right to want to debate this issue, precisely because it is the democratic thing to do. It's also important to note that the Atlanta group was still technically safe, with no time crunch pressuring them to act, so debating the issue would not hamper their survival efforts. As such, Rick concurs and allows Dale to make his case, granting him a day to do so. Dale is also right about the unethical nature of deeming someone guilty due to their association with a group of people. But Dale is missing some vital context that I will be covering in just a second. Dale is also right about the importance of retaining one's humanity or ethics, as that is what will ultimately allow humanity to rebuild civilization. We are a social species that evolved with rudimentary moral instincts, precisely because morality was determined by natural selection to be an evolutionary advantage, especially for an intelligent species like ourselves. That's exactly why ethics matters, because ethics and morality ultimately serve as the foundations for the rule of law and for the social contract. This is all true despite what some moral nihilists might believe. Be that as it may, Dale is missing some important context, information that can render his argument defunct. Let's begin with his claim that Randall is just a kid. Randall, according to the fan wiki, is 20 years old. This was determined to be the case based on selective quotes and pieces of information from the show. He isn't a kid. He's old enough to not only serve in the military, but he's also old enough to be tried as an adult in all legal cases here in the United States, and also in most jurisdictions around the world. Dale's secondary claim, being that Randall is a young man, is far more accurate. Now, this is a nitpick, but it does matter. It shows that Dale is not above using fallacies to make his case. The next bit of context, which does serious damage to Dale's position, is the claim that Randall is essentially being tried for a crime he has yet to commit. You see, Randall has committed a crime of some sort against the group. He openly fired on Rick, Herschel, and Glenn. And he did this right after Rick tried to explain to his group that Dave and Tony attacked them first. He attacked when Rick was attempting to de-escalate hostilities. This crime also puts into question the moral character of Randall. Instead of trying to persuade his group to hear Rick out, he immediately agreed to engage in combat with strangers that clearly did not want to engage in a skirmish. Another piece of evidence showing us that Randall is not a good person is the fact that it took a serious beating from Daryl to get him to talk about his former group of raiders. If he only joined them for the sake of surviving, as he claimed to Rick, Shane, and Daryl, he would have talked immediately. But because he viewed those pillagers to be his comrades, he did not talk until he was physically and mentally broken. Once he did talk, we found out that his group was a collection of violent sexual offenders and indiscriminate killers.
We found this little campsite. Man and his 2 daughters, teenagers, you know, real young, real cute.
Friends, they roll through here. Our boys are dead. Our women, they're gonna wish they were.
Truth be told, all the evidence points in one direction, and that destination being that Randall is just like the tribe he hails from. Okay, this isn't like the kid that Carl shot. We actually have a decent picture of who Randall really is as a person. We can indeed make reasonable judgments about the content of his character. Now, one of Dale's claims that makes zero sense to me, despite it not lacking any context, is the claim that killing Randall would not change anything. Fact of the matter is, terminating Randall would almost certainly keep the farm hidden from his group. If Randall were to rejoin his former group, the number would go up from 30 to 31 men as well. 1 man may not seem like much, but it does fucking matter during a firefight. So yeah, Dale's kinda wrong here. Okay, killing Randall would actually change their circumstances. Then there's Dale's argument which posits that Randall could be an asset through the process of assimilation. Now, this is certainly true, but it isn't guaranteed. As Shane pointed out, Randall could fake it until he makes it back to his people. If he escapes, he could injure or kill one or more of the group's individuals in the process. An escape could lead to the eventual death of all the Atlanta survivors as well. Then there's the potential for Randall to be an incompetent survivor, thus causing him to be a hindrance instead of an asset. Sorta like Nick from Alexandria. Assimilation is also risky in the sense that Randall is just another mouth to feed. And, as Herschel pointed out, winter was coming and food could very easily be a serious concern.
We're just another mouth to feed.
It may be a lean winter.
We could ration better.
During the initial process of assimilation, Randall would need to be guarded. This would also siphon manpower from more crucial tasks. All in all, Dale's wish to make Randall a member of the team comes with some serious risks at a time where risk-taking wasn't affordable. The Atlanta group is not in some established community. They are out in the proverbial woods where food, safety, and shelter are still serious concerns. Prior to the last 2 episodes in Season 2, the group was literally just camping outside on Herschel's front lawn. Their security was eyesight, an old house, and a bunch of tents. There wasn't even a solid perimeter defense. And all of this was in a world where man-eating monsters sit atop of the food chain. Monsters that vastly outnumber our survivors. The group is undeniably still in survival mode. Hence, it stands to say that the group cannot reasonably afford to implement the sorts of ethical standards we see in established communities, societies, and civilizations. An example of how a survival situation can render certain ethical standards to be untenable is the position of ethical veganism, where the consumption of animals is not permitted during normal day life but is yet permissible in a survival scenario.
It's about minimizing it to the highest extent that you can. And so not only, if you're in a situation where you need to eat this stuff to survive, not only do I think you can break your veganism and, eat those animals, I think you can eat those animals and still call yourself a vegan. Because, yeah, sure, you're responsible for some animal death, but so am I. As long as you're contributing the least amount that you practically can to animal suffering, I think you can call yourself a vegan.
That clip was of a prominent vegan activist, by the way. Be that as it may, the point I am trying to make is that assimilation poses more risks than benefits in this particular scenario. It is certainly possible to achieve assimilation, but the real question is whether or not the ROI makes sense. And I don't believe it does, given what we know about Randall and the state of affairs at the farm. Imprisoning Randall for the rest of his life is also needlessly cruel and unjust. You just can't leave a sentient and conscious living being in a poorly insulated shack until they die. Forced labor can also be unnecessarily cruel depending on the type of labor, the frequency of it, and the length of it. In both cases, Randall would be suffering needlessly while also wasting resources. Prolonged imprisonment and forced labor would also make it less likely for Randall to assimilate, as he'd hold resentment towards the group. Letting him go is also risky, as we know that he knows of Maggie's family, and hence he probably knows about the location of the farm.
Mom, I lost her like you lost people. I went to school with Maggie, for God's sake.
Leaving Randall out in the wilderness is also very cruel, as he'd likely die of dehydration or starvation or exposure, or even worse, being torn limb from limb in an excruciatingly painful death by the hands and teeth of walkers. Fact of the matter is, termination is the only choice that makes sense here. It's the safest choice for the group. Randall is guilty of using deadly force on the Atlanta group with malintent, and termination is also, oddly enough, the most benevolent punishment given the circumstances on the farm. So clearly I view Dale to be mostly wrong here, but he was wrong on a deeper level with regards to the group's humanity. The Atlanta group did not take joy in choosing to initially execute Randall. They took the time to discuss the issue, and they even opted to make his termination as painless as possible. So when Dale asked,
How are we any better than those people that we're so afraid of?
the answer ought to be self-evident. The Atlanta group is not an assortment of indiscriminate killers and rapists, and the group has clearly kept their humanity intact. Killing Randall would not change that. Now, if this moral dilemma occurred in Alexandria or the prison, I would adopt Dale's position, precisely because Alexandria and the prison are the states of affairs known as civilization. Shelter, food, and water are not an immediate issue in those communities, and there's even a dedicated prison cell in those communities. But out in the proverbial wilderness, Dale's ethical position cannot be maintained without serious risks and sacrifices. You see, this is the difference between survival ethics and normative ethics. Anyways, that concludes this gold standard Walking Dead video. If you enjoy this sort of content, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also hit that notification icon so that you may be notified when I publish a new video. Don't forget to leave me your thoughts in the comment section as well, and please consider becoming a channel member. It's pretty damn cheap and it helps me to further entertain you. With that said, I am Captain Gold and hope to see you in my next video.